Thanks for being here, Brandon. It's nice to meet you.
Yes, sir.
Nice to talk to you. What the hell is your job as a battalion command sergeant major? What do you do?
So I tell people to do things. I give guidance that they may not know they need to do, that they may be going out and doing things on a regular basis, but just to give them left and right to keep the battalion going in the right direction. Manager of people. There's 5 companies underneath the battalion, and then each one of them has its own commander and its own first sergeant. And those are the ones that I really give probably the most guidance to. And like between tasks or things that they need to have their soldiers do, areas to focus on. One of the biggest things is standards discipline, trying to get back to making sure that soldiers understand why they're doing what they're doing, whatever the mission is, and then what it means to be a professional, and that like take the job serious. So not just I'm here to get paid, I'm here to go shoot a few weapons, come back, and then that's it. How we interface with the community, how we conduct ourselves off base, and getting the new generation to understand that and buy in. Because I've been in for 21 years now, so society has changed, and then now we're getting one generation later than when I came in. So getting them to understand that frame of thought, that's an older, I think, frame of thought from what society has going on now. And then they have to buy into what the military really stands for.
Looking back at your career, you've been like a first sergeant or in a similar role, just at a lower command several times, right?
Yeah. So I was a first sergeant from November of 2018 until March of 2022.
So that about 4 years, and that's between a platoon and a company.
No, just at the company level. So I did, and then I had about 43 months as a platoon sergeant in one company, one platoon as a platoon sergeant, and that was from March of 2014 to November of 2017.
So you went right in the same company from the platoon sergeant to the company first sergeant.
No. So, all right, so I'll walk the dog. So
We,
I
we, we don't we don't need to go into. I'm really just interested in the roles.
like the dynamics.
Yeah, I come from Coast Guard. There's no similar position in a Coast Guard ship and even a Navy ship on the enlisted side. And so I'm kind of curious about this relationship between the first sergeant and the platoon leader. I understand the platoon leader leads the platoon, first sergeant trains the platoon leader. But it's kind of a weird dynamic, isn't it? Young platoon sergeant outranks the first sergeant, but is a lot less experience.
No, so
Go
flip
ahead.
them.
Go ahead.
So the PL, the platoon leader, and the platoon sergeant are paired up.
Got it.
And the rank disparity or the experience disparity is great. So a platoon sergeant might have
Huge.
between 7 and 9 years, and a PL has between 0 and 2 years, 3 years. So the platoon sergeant at the platoon level, there's going to be between 18 and 36 people, but that platoon sergeant has been with soldiers and like he's been grinding for 7 to 11 years, maybe 12 years. And then he does develop the PL. He gives all the guidance like, hey, sir, this is what we need to focus on, this, and this. Because that PL, the platoon leader only has between, at minimum, 12, at most, maybe 18 to 24 months. And then they're moving out. But that platoon sergeant will stay. So I had 5 platoon leaders in that one platoon. So I came in on the tail end of one. I had one when we went to Afghanistan. He moved out to be an XO. I got another one. He was there for about 9 months, and then he moved to a battalion staff position. I got another one, and then we did 12 or 14 months. That one went to be an XO, and then I got the last one that I had, and then we went to Afghanistan again. And then scope is smaller. The experience level of the PL is real junior. They've sometimes just commissioned, and then they come and they get a platoon. And then at the first sergeant level, I had 120 soldiers. And then I was at usually between 12 and 16 years, 13 and 16 years experience. And the commander will have about probably between like 7 or 8 years.
This is at the company level.
Yeah, at the company
Got
level.
it. Yeah. Yep.
They might be at 6 to 8, depending on when they came or whatever their cycle is. So the experience level is closing. It's not as drastic at the company level, but all they've done is they've had one or two maybe platoons. They've probably been an XO, and then maybe they did some time on staff. But the only time that they were in front of a formation was as a platoon leader. So you're kind of guiding how to interact with subordinate platoon leaders who they may have forgotten what it was like to be a PL, and maybe they forgot what it was like to be fresh, and like getting them to develop those subordinates. And 3 different platoon leaders have 3 different personalities and dynamics. Company commander has a different dynamic. How do you get that commander to change their leadership style, to grow and develop and get success out of 3 very different individuals at times?
What makes
Someone that's willing to listen to their NCO, and then they know what's supposed to happen, they know what needs to happen, and then just giving some broad guidance to an NCO and saying, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I expect. Go out and do great things. And then if they're not sure of what's going on, or if they want something changed, like they just go back and they have a communication. So the Army's really good at assigning a battle buddy. It starts at the platoon level. So at the platoon level, the platoon sergeant gets a platoon leader, and they become like mind meld, and they have to learn to think alike. I, as an NCO, have to know what the officer is going to expect or what they need. And then I kind of just set things in motion to help them and to ensure that they're successful, and then give feedback whenever they need it.
If the platoon leader isn't successful, is it your fault as a first sergeant? Are you held accountable?
Kind of. So if the PL isn't successful, or if the company commander isn't successful, so the platoon sergeant, PL, and then the first sergeant and the company commander, if the platoon sergeant is or the first sergeant is absent from either one of those and they're not proactive, then you're probably going to get yelled at, like, why didn't you help? And that's if you're absent. If you're there, everyone's going to see that you're trying to do the right thing, or that you're trying to coach the person along. But if they don't want to receive the coaching or the tips, or if they don't see the writing on the wall, so to speak, and what the trend is, and what somebody, doesn't have to be a commander, what somebody is doing to an organization that's hurting it, either through behaviors, leadership style, the way they manage tasks, the way they take care of their soldiers, and how that like starts tearing away at the fabric of a unit, that I think would fall more on the NCO. Like, why are you letting the morale decline? Why are people treating others this way? And that's more of, I think, where I would be held accountable, is if I let that behavior continue and didn't check it.
I've heard plenty of battalion commanders and company commanders firing platoon leaders. Did you ever fire a first sergeant?
So I've never had to fire a platoon sergeant. As a CSM, I won't have influence, like direct influence, on who's one of my first sergeants until if I was to be a brigade CSM.
So you don't get to choose your own first sergeants as a battalion? CSM?
I can kind of voice an opinion.
Who's making that decision? The brigade?
The brigade. So it's usually 2 levels above for the NCOs. So like, I can identify, select, potentially fire a platoon sergeant, but I can't just walk in and say, like, you're not cutting the mustard, like, you got to go. I got to make sure that they were. I say I can't. Probably, depending on what it was, it could happen, but I think it has to. I have to show that I was unable, or that soldier was unable to be developed. So, counseling, multiple field exercises or events that show that they they continued to not adhere to the standard. They didn't make corrections. They were part of the reason why performance started to suffer. And then because of their shortfalls, like it was documented, they didn't show progress. And so now I have reason, I have justification. It's not just my thought on why they should not be in charge of soldiers.
Tell me about the difference in importance in the armed unit between the garrison duties, the admin duties, and the tactical duties. Certainly, you've seen a first sergeant who was a tactical rock star and a administrative loser, and probably the same vice versa, both ways. What's the most important?
So I think it has to be very balanced. So before you can get out to the field or deploy, you have to have soldiers that are ready. And the Army tracks it through systems. And there's like medical systems, there's performances, there's evaluations, there's reception of soldiers, how you integrate them, how you check their gear, how you develop leaders before they even go to the field, so that when they go to the field, they're able to lead soldiers for tactical tasks, to mass fires, to establish support by fires, to conduct assaults, to do a raid, to walk with soldiers, to drive at night under night vision. It all has to start somewhere. In my opinion, it's critical to be able to do it in the garrison environment where there's no threat or low threat. There's more distractions because you're there from 6:30 in the morning till maybe 1800. But in between then, it's really 6:30 to 8 for PT. 9:30, 10:30 is work. 11:30 to 1, 12:30 is lunch. Come back and then you work for 4 hours. So you have to be able to time manage. You have to be able to receive new soldiers, check their gear. Leaders, team leaders, which is the lowest level of leader, have to be able to control their soldiers, have to be able to give them tasks, get them to do things, PMCS on vehicles, PMCS their gear if they're in a light formation. And then at some point, they will go out and they will transition. And most of those admin duties will fall to the side and they'll get like shelved. But we need soldiers that are ready, that are medically current, administratively current, so that when they go out, they can do their job. And we know that we've prepared them, we've checked on things. An incident happens where they're driving at night and an accident occurs and a soldier loses their life. One thing that a family will remember is one, that they lost a loved one, which is horrible. And the second is when the Army goes through its processes to disperse money or to pay life insurance, and a soldier gets married, and 2 days later they go out to the field and they never updated their DD-93, so their life insurance or their SGLI. Like, that's very much an admin task, but when you go outside and you go to train or you deploy, and 2 days later after you get married, system wasn't updated, new spouse isn't in there, or family dynamic changes and that's not updated, that's very much an admin task. It's not glorious, it's not beautiful, but it's critical to take care of soldiers. Making sure that soldiers get hearing tests, so that if they need hearing aids, the Army will provide it. So there's a lot of individual responsibility that I try to push, like individual readiness, I think is critical, and it frees up leaders to do their own thing. There are some that are very good on an Excel sheet, tracking things or dealing with the garrison environment, and then they do have shortfalls in the field, but I think you can train those very easily. If you can't think of a process or execute a process in the garrison, but you're really strong in the field, I feel that's harder to train, if that makes any
It's
sense.
harder to train the admin stuff than it is the field stuff.
I think so. Because in the field, you're out there for 24 hours a day, maybe 30 days in the field, or at a CTC rotation, either Fort Irwin or Fort Polk, or Fort Johnson as it was. And then there's one in Germany. So for them, you have limited distractions. Like phones get taken away, they get stored. Soldiers don't have outside access. They have just the leaders that they're there with, and then they focus on their training. So I can, through repetition, we can train the same task and the same processes that allow and enable success.
In terms of the officers that you worked with, you say you get your battle buddy or whatever, you've got a mind meld with a platoon leader. Let's just keep it to the platoon level right now. What if
Yeah.
you don't mind meld? Who gives? Certainly you've had conflict with the platoon leader.
So they're usually very strong. They start out on the tactical side and they know exactly what needs to be done. They've been trained in the tactics. What they lack in is the admin side. So being able to communicate to them what needs to be done on the admin side, the garrison type tasks, and then getting them to understand, if we do really well at this, I will be able to give you this many soldiers, this many vehicles that aren't broke when we go to the field so that you can do your piece of the pie. The things that everyone loves to do: go out in the woods, walk, move under heavy loads, train tactical tasks, get better at the profession. So I think there has to be an understanding. They have to know, because they're a new soldier, they just happen to be a commissioned officer, but they have to know and understand why the soldiers are doing things that have little tactical implications now, so that they can be ready whenever they decide to go out to the field and do some training. And I think there needs to be a balance. Do I know the best way? Sure. But that platoon leader probably needs to have some struggle in their day-to-day operations so that they can understand what doesn't work and does not work. If everything was grass and there was no hard times, they would just come in and expect it to be that way. So some struggles, some learning curves, I think are important.
You're saying you let them struggle a little bit.
I think either intentionally or unintentionally. So if I'm like, hey, we got to do this today, and then the PL, I remember a few times, PL was like, I don't, we're not going, we don't, I don't think we should do that. I'm like, sir, we need to do this. Like, this is why, da 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 da. And they say, no, like, I don't think we should. Okay, then we won't do it. And then we didn't do it. And then like a day later, the question came up, where are you on this? And I looked at him and I was like, and then after the meeting, this was like a company meeting. After the meeting, he came in and goes, was that what we were doing yesterday? I was like, it was. He was like, okay, I understand. So like, I was like, okay. I was like, no issue, sir. We're already done with it. We did what you wanted, and then we went back and we did it anyway. They have to trust that the PL has to trust that the platoon sergeant's not going to leave them out to dry, or set them up for failure. Because that's the other issue is sometimes you might have an absent platoon sergeant or someone who's not good in an area, and that platoon leader will fail over and over, or their company commander will notice it and then counsel them, and then that's forever scarred in their memory like scar tissue, and that will transfer over to when they're a company commander or a battalion commander. That NCO, their battle buddy, and how they set them up for a little bit of failure or too much struggle will always be emblazoned in their mind on what an NCO can do or has done to them.
Oh, so they'll resent that. They'll carry that forward in resentment or something.
Yeah, I think maybe not resentment, but like a watchful eye. Like, I remember an NCO used to do something like this or used to do this, and this is what happened. And I think we all do that, like humans. You trust somebody until they can't be trusted, or you value an opinion until they show you something other than what should be trusted.
Did you ever just not like one of your platoon leaders and set him up to fail?
No. So
But
I
did you ever not like one of your platoon leaders?
yeah, there there was one we just didn't get along, and not for anything crazy. I could still talk to him, and he was a nice person. He didn't do anything that hurt the platoon really, but in my mind it wasn't what was supposed to be a platoon leader. But we were deployed, and there was no negativity that came from it. In my mind, it just didn't sit right. But I've always been able to hold fairly true. It doesn't work out for one of two reasons. It's either personality driven. If I don't like you as a person, or if your personality and mine doesn't work, I don't care. Like, I'll get over it. I can move past that. Performance is where the gap is. Well, then, like, that's where, like, I can't move off of that.
Explain that, unpack that performance. In other words, the guy is lazy or he isn't tactically proficient, or what do you mean?
Right. So, really, any of that. And if they're not willing to get better, if they either they know consciously they know that they're not good at something, or unconsciously, and then through feedback, through interactions, through iterations of training event, they just never make any changes, and they keep expecting the same output with the same inputs. Like, and that goes for officers or NCOs, soldiers. Like, if I'm telling you and people are telling you that this isn't working because of ABC 1 2 3, and you're like, well, we're still going to do ABC 1 2 3 in the exact same way that we did it before, then that's where I have the real consternation or the real pain of how to either get them to develop, or how do you minimize their negative impact on a formation.
You've been downrange in these situations a lot. Did you ever just think, why aren't I just leading this damn thing? Why do I need this platoon leader? Why do we have platoon leaders, Brandon?
So I don't think I ever did. So we were able to operate, and luckily deployed, there was never like tactical decisions that were made that were, I was like, this is going to get someone hurt. Luckily for us, I think I had really strong NCOs at the section level and the team leader level, and they're able to run their sections, so 9 to 12 guys, and then they'd have two team leaders who are able to run their 3 to 5 guys well, with discipline. They've been trained. So even deployed, we'd go to the range 2 or 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week for a couple hours. We'd do rehearsals, we'd inspect gear, like check, make sure that bags get reset, batteries get recharged. So there's very little, and a lot of people would say that's like fundamentals, which fundamentals prepare for bad days. They limit the error that can occur, and that there's a person named Murphy, like Murphy's laws. Like, Murphy will just pop up and something will happen. So if you, oh, I don't want to carry an extra battery. Well, when you go out and that one battery dies, or if it falls and it breaks the radio, whatever, and if you don't bring the spare battery, like, now you have no radio. So we were good at checking basics, rechecking equipment to make sure that we were replenishing whatever we used. And I think the training at the section team level, and then what I would say, my ability to communicate with the PL and say, hey, sir, we need to do this and this. Guys are going to train this today. And there was, okay, I got it, understood. Okay. And then we would go out, we would watch the training, we'd participate in the training. And that minimizes, I think, a lot of the risk.
Did you ever work with a PL came from West Point?
Yes.
Was there a difference between that individual and the guys came through OCS or ROTC?
So I think I've had really good luck with almost all of the leaders that I've ever had in the Army. So there's some colleges that produce, like, by the nature of their design, the major service colleges, West Point, Naval Academy, Air Force's Service Academy. I haven't seen anyone come out of Air Force, like West Point specifically, and then other ones that produce. When I hear, oh, you're from this one, there's already a connotation or a thought that they come and that they should be able to perform.
How about like Virginia Tech, A&M, those type of universities, the Citadel, VMI?
Right. VMI, Citadel, William and Mary.
Well,
My my second PL came out of William and Mary. I got him 2004 in Iraq, and he was from, like, William and Mary. And so ever since him, I'm like, what college are you from? And then I ask him, like, when I hear somebody say William and Mary, I'm like, probably a good leader. I think some of that is a false perception, and I think this goes from the comment that I put in that you had posted about the Ranger tab. Like, because somebody says that they came from West Point or a service college or Texas A&M, I think there's already a perception that they're going to be this type of person. I think just as much as where you go to school is the type of person that you were when you went in, and the type of person and leader that you came out because of the experiences that you had and as much as you were willing to take from the training. If
So
somebody,
there's a personality type that's going to go to West Point anyway, and that person's going to be inclined to be an Army leader. Go ahead.
or they will go to West Point and they went to West Point because it comes with the name.
Could be one of those. Either or. Right.
Right.
Got it.
So, and I think that's no matter where you are. The majority of officers that I see, like regardless of the commissioning source that they come out of, they're generally pretty good, especially when you get past the company level, because the ability to get out up and through the company level is easier because you're probably less than 10 years. When they become majors, they're at like between 12 and 14 years maybe. And so most likely they've already bought in to the idea of either a military, the retirement, they love what they do, they love the soldiers, a combination of all of it. So I think I like to ask if they're from West Point because there's some stuff that West Pointers are supposed to retain as like knowledge. It's called like plebe knowledge. And you can ask them like, how's the cow? And then there's like a stuff that they have to memorize. There's a couple other ones that I just asked just to get a laugh, and they kind of chuckle and they're like, I forgot or I tried to forget. And I'm like, well, I was like, I want to know the definition. Like, tell me about it. And then I think it shows their buy-in. It's a way to break the ice. It's a way to start a conversation because it's something that I have never experienced. It's something that they at one time had intimate knowledge or experience with. And then their 4 years in college was centered around it. Either them learning it, them requiring new soldiers or new cadets to come in and learn. So they were either on the receiving end or the side that was requiring people to learn it as part of tradition, as part of history, the ability just to retain knowledge by like either rote memorization or habit, which is all very useful when you move into a military lifestyle or profession.
What what are some of the biggest mistakes you made as a first sergeant platoon? Ones that stand out, you're like, wow, I really fucked that up.
I think if I would have, so once you're in the leadership position as either a platoon sergeant or a first sergeant, it becomes more, I was able to resist more as a first sergeant, but really at a platoon sergeant level, the desire to get things done, accomplish tasks. I took some of the ownership of how they completed tasks or the speed at which they did, even if it was the garrison tasks, away from some of my subordinate leaders at times. And I think if they would have took more time, like I could have given them more time, and then they would have gotten better. They would have been able to do it on their own.
So what do you mean you went in and did it for them?
I would be more prescriptive in how to do
So
the
you'd
task.
micromanage them?
Yeah. And
Got it.
is it bad? Overall, yes. Specific instances, maybe not. I think you have to be able to turn it on or turn it off. And an indicator of was it successful? One of my section leaders replaced me as a first sergeant as the first sergeant. So I moved to New York and I became a first sergeant. And then so that was in 21. So 4 years later, 4 years after I left the platoon, I was already at drum. Someone who was my section leader came up and replaced me as the first sergeant. And then I went over to another first sergeant position. And then he did well for 18 months, 12 or 18 months. So he was able to progress still. It didn't stifle his growth or his development as an NCO. I just, looking back, I wish I would have not done that. The frustrating part is there's pressure to like get things done quickly. And then so if there's pressure and you're giving out a task and you're like, hey, this has to be done in 2 days, 3 days. If they've never done it before, it might take them a day or two to formulate the best way forward, to set it up or to start executing so that it's done right. But if you don't have that amount of time, or if something came up out of the blue and you weren't prepared for it, I think you have to be very flexible in when you choose to micromanage and how much, how long. I will say I don't think, like, I would micromanage for a task, but I wouldn't micromanage day to day or for more than that one task. So I think you turn it on for certain things, and then you have to be very, very likely or very able to turn it off and go back to let them do their job. Because otherwise you just become the person that micromanages everything.
It's interesting you talk about that pressure. Where that pressure coming from? Your platoon leader, or the battalion commander, or the NCO above you?
So I think like the first sergeant, the NCO above me, and then the battalion. So either battalion, or we think we have 14 days to do training, and then something gets put on the training calendar, or something gets shifted, or a spot opens up for opportunity training. Like, we're planning on going to the range in 3 weeks, and then next week is going to be the range. Well, we're trying to dispatch vehicles this week for the field problem that's coming up. That was supposed to be in 2 weeks. Now we have to do it in 1 week, and then we have to train the soldiers that are going to go to the range and do the PMI, or like the pre-training, so that they can go out as best prepared as possible. So I think, like, I would say, take these 5 soldiers, go dispatch and prep these vehicles, take these 10 soldiers, these NCOs, and go do the pre-training. And sometimes it might be needed because the section leader has his 9 or 12 bubbas, and then the other section leader has his 9 or 12. And maybe to accomplish the mission, like, somebody might need soldiers from another person's section. So I'm just like piecemealing or pulling to go accomplish the task, to get ready. And then, as long, I think it makes it easier or palpable if they understand the why. Like, hey, we're doing this so that we can dispatch vehicles and do the training at the same time and be ready for next week. It's just, looking back, I probably wish that I would have protected the time of my subordinates to do more and limit my desire to go fix things. And then most leaders, I would say, in the Army are alphas, like alpha mindset. They come up like task doers for the first, until you're an NCO, for the first 2 to 3 years. Your whole job is like, task comes up, I go do task. Like, when a task comes up, I just go knock it out. So it's at the platoon level, the company level, when tasks come up, you're like, all right, just how do I knock out the task as quickly as possible? And if some people can't turn and conceptualize how to do the task, it just makes it, unfortunately, it makes it easier to just go in and take control and make things happen.
In the officer world, the Army, as I understand it, in the battalion, every platoon leader gets ranked at the end of a certain period. And I imagine the same is true for every company commander and probably every battalion commander. So in the officer world, there is this not so quiet friggin' competition going on between, these officers that can be healthy or unhealthy. Does the same thing exist in the NCO world? Are you competing with the first sergeant, of the fellow company, or the other platoon sergeants, platoon sergeants, if you're in that level?
So, yes. So platoon sergeants compete against each other inside of the company. First sergeants compete against the other first sergeants in the battalion. Like, battalion CSMs are competing against the other battalion CSMs, and then it just goes up. It is competition in that, at the end of the day, only one person can get the top block, or right now the highest rating on a block check that you can get is, it's called most qualified. So it's competition because only 1 in 20, only the top 24% can get it. So whoever the rater, or whoever the senior rater is, has to have enough evaluations to support 2 most qualified. So you need 9 evaluations to give out 2 MQs. Well, there's only 5 battalions or 6 battalions, so only 1 can get it. And then somebody else has to come in. And so there's a cycle because of timing. And over the period, a person can only give so much because they're limited to a percentage. Same thing for the officers. Their numbers are a little different, but only a certain number of officers can get the top block based on the pool of they're in. So there is some ranking, and I think how I look at it, it's not direct competition. It's not like I'm going out. I showed up today and did PT, and I'm not looking to see who else didn't do PT, or we went out to the field and we drove this many miles or we did this many things. I think I'm looking at the readiness metrics. So, like medically ready, I want that to be higher. I want higher readiness numbers. I want lower numbers of risky behaviors, DUIs, infractions, disciplinary issues like UCMJ. I want that to be low. If I have a high number of soldiers leaving and all of them have awards and soldiers are re-enlisting to stay in my unit, then that's a good thing. If soldiers are re-enlisting to go somewhere else in the Army, then that's also a good thing. So if my retention's high, if my disciplinary infractions are low, if my medical readiness is high, if across the board we have good PT, we have companies that are getting after it, we have soldiers that like where they come to work, to me, I'm already winning. It's not so much how I'm doing on a day-to-day basis with against another battalion CSM. It's more the culture. Do people want to be here? The readiness. Are we doing the right things? Are we keeping soldiers able to be in the fight? And are we able to go out and do the task? Are our vehicles ready? And when we go out, we can go out and we can use our vehicles how they were designed.
Of the different jobs, you got the squad leader, section leader, platoon sergeant, first sergeant, company first sergeant. If you could look back and say, you know what, if I could have just stayed at one of those levels and not had to go up and just stayed there, that was a fun friggin' job. I loved it and I could have done that forever. Is there one of those jobs that stands out like that?
Probably, well, knowing what I know now, probably a platoon sergeant.
Really?
So
Why?
either platoon sergeant or first sergeant, but the one that comes to my mind, probably platoon sergeant. So I have between 18 and 24. Infantry units might have up to 36. You are directly responsible for preparing soldiers to get promoted. Like all the 10 level soldiers, all your E1 to E4, preparing them to get promoted. And if they're not ready to be promoted, then that's your job as a platoon sergeant to train them and to get them ready, to make them the most competitive. You're the ones that do get promoted, or if you get NCOs, sergeants, um, you directly influence their outlook on the Army.
What is a platoon sergeant? E6?
Devin, usually
Okay. E7, okay.
you take a platoon leader who knows nothing about the Army usually, and you can shape, you can help craft, you can mold them into a quality officer, somebody who wants to be in the Army, somebody who believes in their NCOs, who cherishes soldiers, that like without soldiers the Army can't do its job. And then that you can influence that platoon leader, hopefully that you've done well, that you have his best interests at heart or her heart, and they're going to stay in the Army and they're going to go be a company commander. And then their impression from then on, just like I said before, was like, hey, first sergeant, why are you not paying attention to this? When I was a platoon leader, my platoon sergeant helped me with this, or he did this, or she did this, and they were like, they made me successful. That company commander can go and tell platoon sergeants like, hey, why aren't you checking maintenance? When was the last time you had your soldiers and you drew weapons just to go train magazine drills? When was the last time you did layouts of your vehicles, and when was the last time people knew where things go on vehicles? When was the last time you gave a class on like CLS or like tactical combat casualty care? So like that experience as a platoon leader is directly shaped by the platoon sergeant. They have the most power, direct power.
Direct power. Can you describe the platoon sergeant, first sergeant, or battalion command sergeant major, the one that you ran into that was just the worst? Was there
So
one
the
that just stood out that just was, and who was that person and what made them bad?
I don't think made it bad. So the hardest transition It's probably two. One, so when I was a platoon sergeant and I came in, the platoon sergeant that was leaving had a big personality. So people were very, very tied to that person's way of thinking. They, I would say, embodied. That might be a strong word, but that person's presence was felt even after they left, which for the most part was fine. But then when a new leader comes in, it makes it hard for them to transition. And I would ask things like, why are we doing this way? And they were like, that's the way that we always do it. And I was like, well, if that's your reason, then that's a bad reason. Like, the reason should be, we're doing it this way because the unit SOP, like their standard way of doing things is this: block checks. Like, we do these things to dispatch a vehicle, this, and this. But all I got was, that's the way that we've always done it. But what does that mean? And they were like, that's just the way that we've always done it in this platoon. I'm like, well, that person, I don't think directly said, this is how we're going to do it. It's just the culture, like the way that they operated. And it took probably 3 or 4 months to change that. The second one, when I came into the battalion position that I'm in now, one, because probably my own shortcoming, I've never been a battalion CSM before. There's no school that really teaches you how to be a battalion command sergeant major. So the Sergeant Major Academy teaches you how to be a sergeant major, how to go through staff processes. It talks about the framework of being a leader at the operational or strategic level. It gets you to be able to brief, to be able to talk through some things. You understand your connection to the Constitution. You understand what ethical behaviors are. You understand things that you do have an impact on the organization, and they can destroy the fabric or the morale. But there's no one that says, when you come in on day 1 through 10, these are the things that you need to do. These are going to be the expectations. These are some indicators that you need to look out for. So really, I've taken what I've learned over the past 20 years, and then I come in and I'm like, I don't really like that, or I like that, or why are we doing it this way? So, and it wasn't anything from the person before. It was just a struggle or a challenge to come into the position that I've never sat in the seat before. Limited exposure on how somebody actually did it. And that would be the biggest struggle or the biggest challenge. Is just, you don't learn to do the job that you're about to go into until you're there.
Can you describe the officer or two, without using names, of course, who was just a total loser in your
Officer or
officer, one or two officers?
okay. I think I've had one, and I think it was just on personality. They were a little more meek or timid than you have. So I'm a 19 Delta by trade, Cav Scout, trained to walk good amount of distance under load, to operate independently, generally alpha mindsets. And I say that just because they're not usually timid. If they don't like it, they're going to say something about it. If you don't give them direction, they're going to do what they think is best, and they're going to move out, and they're going to look to push the envelope on what they can do to achieve successes. And then there was a PL, and he didn't lack like the presence of, I'm the platoon leader. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And then so I would have to tell the section leaders, like, hey, like, settle down. We're not pushing that much. Or part of my job, I thought, was like, pull back. Like, I know you know what to do, and I know you can do it well, but we also have to develop the platoon leader. So being able to temper egos and try to get somebody whose ego is not as aggressive, or presence isn't as aggressive as it could be, to get out there more and to be more present. And then a second one, there was an officer who, from past experiences, had some struggles or challenges that probably weren't dealt with. And then in the most serious of times, when stress and the ability to manage stress is paramount, they fell short. And I think that was mentally strenuous and more harmful for those around them and the unit in general than if they would have just been absent, because they saw a potentially like middle to senior leader, unable to focus, unable to react. And then how do you can't reinstill confidence. You can't, like, that's an uphill battle for forever. So I wouldn't say like they were just bad or horrible. I think because I know the one leader from previous time, and I just don't think stuff got dealt with, and then they hit a breaking point, and then that fracture was seen by everybody.
I was just watching something the other day, and it was I don't know who it was. Somebody in the Army, senior leader, older guy anyway. Even look older than you and me. Uh, his general point he was making was that the GWOT wars didn't prepare an army or a U.S. military for a war against a peer like China or Russia or whatever. And he described, going out patrol, coming about to the base, going to the KBR, McDonald's, watching Netflix at night, that kind of crap. Do you think those wars made you soft? Made the military soft? You were downrange, what, 5 years
Uh,
altogether?
yeah, I'm at altogether like 58 months.
Right.
So I don't think it made us soft. I think expectation management, what we expect, what we've grown to know as being deployed for a combat deployment. So Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria are the big ones now because they did have the infrastructure and the base support that you could go out, just like whoever it was that said that, like, you go out, you do your mission, you come back, and it's 8 minutes, or it's not 8 minutes, it's maybe 8 hours, usually 8 hours, 10 hours from the time you get ready. You go out for 4 or 5 hours, you come back, and then you have 3 hours, 2 hours of recovery, and then you're done for the day. You go back to your room. I think the expectation, if we look at what's going on with Ukraine as like a template, the expectation is that there's going to be limited or no safe space. So the ability to go back onto a base and go to a DFAC is going to be limited. We're going to have to rely on potentially like 92 Golfs or the cooks in the Army to cook, which is fine. They can do it. The one thing that we still do or have been doing for at least I would say the last 5 or 6 years is that when we do our field events at home station, so whatever military installation you pick, or when you go to one of the CTCs, NTC, so Fort Irwin, California, Fort Polk,
These are the big national training centers.
right, the national training centers. Like, that's how we already train. You go to a location and then you get ready for 5 days, 7 days. You build, like, you get all the forces ready, get all the vehicles ready, set your equipment, and then you drive out, and then you start your mission. As soon as you drive out on day like 7, it's day 0. And then you're out there for 14, 21 days, and that's how you're living. You're sleeping on trucks. You're not going back into a fob anymore. You're not going to a safe space. You're not going to a place I went to NTC in February we were there January 27th or 28th until March 7th. And there's some time on the front end and the back end, roughly 2 weeks maybe, where it was very, like, I went back to a room every night. I slept on a cot. There was food trucks. But then the day that you went out, like, we went out and I didn't see a porta potty for 15 days. I didn't shower. I didn't have running water. I drank out of a Nalgene canteens. Either I had an MRE. I would eat one MRE a day, or I'd eat one like heat and serve meal that they would prep, and then you'd have to go to that location to get it, and then you'd drive away. So we're already training for it. I think it's an expectation. Will it go towards that fob style mentality where I'll be able to go back and get Burger King or McDonald's or whatever it is that's offered? I think there's still some that believe that may be a possibility, but I think we're already training for what we're going to experience with limited to no connectivity, not having a safe space to go to. It's whoever's around you, however many vehicles, you sleep on the.
When you watch the YouTube videos of drones tracking down individual soldiers in Ukraine, that must just fucking terrify you. It looks terrifying to me.
So the ones with the little quadcopters, I think those are more harassing. The ones that I've seen, they're like kamikaze drones almost. Yeah, those are pretty frightening. Being in Syria, we had 12, they're called like one-way UASs.
They're kamikaze drones.
Right.
Yeah.
And they'll fire them from 200 miles away, and they come in at like 120 knots. So they're moving. And then we shot down 9 of them. So like those are already been a threat, and they've been a threat since 2020, I would say, like 2021. The scary part is the ones in Ukraine are using FMV. So like they're able to pull a video feed and broadcast it.
Yeah.
Which means somebody somewhere within 20 miles, 30 miles is watching. So within 30 miles of the people in Ukraine that are getting their drones flown at them, like somebody's watching and going after them. I think that's the more scary part, is not just the threat, but the possibility that somebody's at a decently close distance to you and they're able to fly a drone at you. That's the concerning part, I think.
Do you resent special forces and the attention they get and the money they get? You're a big army guy.
I love them.
Why?
So this is my belief. Everybody in the Army has its own reason for being there. Everybody, conventional Army, so there's conventional Army, and then there's light infantry units, and then there's ABCTs, there's Ranger Regiment, and then there's Special Forces, and then there's Cyber Defenders, there's UAV pilot, like whoever it is. Special Forces can't do the job of the conventional Army. They can't go in and they can't take cities at large. They can't, if we ever go against a Russian battle group, so like a brigade, like an SF team can't go out and take out a whole brigade size element. Like you need the complements of what individual units or individual unit types bring to the fight. But I can't go out and teach, coach, mentor, develop foreign forces. I can't take people that have never held a weapon before, teach them to shoot a weapon, how to defend themselves, use tactics, and make them an ally of the Army, of the FID, foreign internal defense. Like that's their bread and butter. They have like 5 mission sets, and they're trained to go out and do that, to build up a foreign military to defend themselves. Not really to do what the Army needs it to do or what the US needs it to do, but they go out and they build and they teach them how to defend themselves, and they start to professionalize or to bring in some tactics and make them capable. And then the expectation is like, we taught you well, we trained you well, we're going to keep here, we're a partner. And then naturally they're just going to want to keep that relationship. So then they start to be an ally, but it's not for that sole purpose. I think it gives us an entryway into an area. We've been in Djibouti, Africa, since I remember hearing people going there for training exercises in like early 90s, mid 90s, and we're still there, and we're doing the exact same thing. We haven't expanded. There's a training mission there. There's an advisor piece. I have one of the PLs, not my PL. 2015, he was a platoon leader. He left, and now he's a Green Beret, and he's like still a close friend from my time in Syria. This last rotation, one of the ODA teams that was there, we talk on phone. I went to NTC, and then I seen one of the guys from the team that was out there in Syria, and I was like, what's up? He was like, what are you doing? And then we reconnected. It was like 2 long lost brothers that haven't seen each other, and I'd seen them about a year and 2 months before. And then I was like, is the rest of the team here? And he was like, yep. And then so I went and we met, and I was with my battalion commander, and I was like, sir, you want to go see the Op 4's ODA team? He was like, what? I was like, I know him from Syria. And then we just went, and then they were like, hey, how are you doing? Like, I don't think there's real rivalry or animosity, at least not from my end. If anything, I appreciate them. Some people will say Ranger Regiment is not Special Forces. They fall under that umbrella, but they're not SF. You don't have to go to Special Forces to be a soldier in a Ranger Regiment, or you just have to go to Ranger School and graduate. And they have, I think their best claim is they do the fundamentals really well. So like they're a very specialized infantry battalion or infantry brigade, and they do a very specific mission set. They're very small, they're very highly trained, and they have a very specific purpose. The conventional army, the ABCT, has a very specific mission set. It's to take firepower and go destroy the enemies of the U.S. Like tanks, 120 millimeter cannon. One of the companies, we have 16 tanks. We have 2 companies, so 32 tanks. Double that, 32, so 64. Another 16, so like 80, maybe 90 tanks, 80 tanks in a brigade. And now the math's adding up, so I'm starting to like generalize. But we have tanks, Bradleys, FA's got Paladins, the engineers, they come with stuff. So like everyone has a very specific mindset. And then the active duty only has 40%, I think it was, of the combat power for the Army. The rest of it is in the National Guard.
Wow.
The logistical support, same thing. Like the reserves, they make up a huge portion of our logistical piece. So when they run theater sustainment companies and commands, expeditionary support commands, so they bring stuff to the fight that the active duty can't do by itself. It's very much an ecosystem, I think, where it relies on everyone to do their own part. If Special Forces was starting to try to train to do what a conventional unit would do, they would have to give something up.
Yeah.
Either their size or what their core mission is. Like something would have to change. And if I was like, I really want to do what they do, but I don't want to be Special Forces, well, you're a lot bigger. We have 4,500 people in a brigade. Like you're too big to do what they do. And size, money, like they're a lot smaller. Their funding is easier to manage on some areas, just because they don't have 5,000 people that they're deploying. When an ODA team goes, they're 9 to 18 people, maybe, including support. When a brigade deploys, it's 5,000. The battalion that I have is 580. So size alone, like we can't compare. And their lowest rank is like staff sergeants, sergeant first classes. So, and that doesn't make it easier. I think it makes it different because they still have to train and bring new members of the team up to par with people that have been on the team for 4 years. So I think they have just as many struggles. I think they're just different.
You had described the difference in experience between the platoon sergeant, platoon leader, and then company first sergeant, commander. It's getting a little bit narrower. And now at the battalion level, I mean, what do your BAT CO has probably been in 17, 18 years, right? You got a few years on.
So I'm at 21, and I think he's at 19.
So it's closer.
Right. And there's
Is that better or worse? You can't throw your experience card at him, can you?
Right. So I can say things. I can give my thought. So now I think it's not so much as a platoon sergeant, I might say something, and like he doesn't know. So whatever I'm telling him has to be true.
Right.
Because right, that can be used for benefit or to the detriment. Now, if I say something and I don't have an explanation, or if he's like, "Why do you think that?" and if I'm just like, "Well, that's just the best idea," he's going to be like, no, that doesn't cut it. Right. So I think we should do this because this, it'll impact this, and this. If we don't do it, here's the risk. So like when I say we need to do one thing or two things, we need to do these two things because it's going to do this and this for us. If we don't do it, this is the risk. Then he can, my belief is that he can understand when I'm like, okay, we need to do two things. Here's the reasons why. And if we don't do it, here's the risk that I'm going to have to accept. And does that mean that he's going to listen all the time? No. And that's fine. He doesn't have to. But if I don't give him that, then I'm not providing value, I don't think. So I think
Right.
me being able to explain it, and we're at the same timeline roughly in the military, plus or minus 4 years. There's some battalion commanders that might be at 16 years if they were selected early to major, or selected early to major and selected early to lieutenant colonel. They might be at 16 or 17 years. There's some sergeant majors that might be 18 years in the Army.
Okay.
But usually 18 for 16 to 19 or 16 to 20 for a battalion commander, and 16 to 25 for a CSM.
Would you rather be a battalion sergeant major or a battalion commander?
Battalion sergeant major.
Why?
So some people at some point they think I would want to be an officer. I've never wanted to be an officer because, not so much now, but every time up until I was a platoon sergeant, I was with soldiers every single day. That's where, like, and they were mine. Like, I had one platoon with 24 guys, and they were all mine. And then as a first sergeant, I had 120. I had 3 platoon sergeants and 3 platoon leaders. And then I would still talk to soldiers, still see soldiers, be with soldiers. But my ability to get in front of all of them was maybe, like in a group setting, was maybe once a week. If I was lucky, most likely maybe once a month. As a platoon sergeant, like every day. And if I wasn't with them, like, then what was I doing? So platoon leader, you might not be in front of the soldiers every single day. You'll be around, but you're not there for all of the training, the planning of the training, the preparation of the training, the executing. So I think interaction with soldiers. And then now my thought is still the same. One of my primary goals is care of soldiers, the quality of training that NCOs provide, and standards and discipline. So the officer mindset it's not centered around that. It's probably care of soldiers in their formation and execution of the mission. Like, those are their big priorities. Like, they have to care for the soldiers because how soldiers are treated is 100% their responsibility. And then their primary goal is they need to be able to fight and win their formation. For me, I just don't want to think about that. I don't find enjoyment in it. I mean, I could probably do it. I wouldn't, coming in now, I probably would struggle because I think there's critical points and critical lessons that you learn as a platoon leader, as a company commander. It's easier to maneuver a company than if you were to just go be a battalion commander.
Okay.
And then the broadening assignments and the experiences that you learn along the way as an officer prepare you to be a battalion commander, I think. So battalion staff time, brigade staff time, your broadening assignments in either joint command, as an aide for a general officer, you start seeing the bigger picture and how they look at the situation and how they look at organizations, so they can memory bank it so that when they're in front of a battalion, they'll have seen successful leaders and what their thoughts were and how they did things, and they can implement it. I just think NCOs, their focus is different.
I came across and kind of met you via LinkedIn. We had this, don't need to go into it, but a battalion commander now, he wrote an essay for me, an article, and he argued, his main argument was that there's some implicit bias in leadership decisions, at least at the officer level, and he wanted to see some changes to that. One of them was removing different school and other tabs from uniforms. One was a 360 leadership review. Another was not looking at past evaluation reports and making current leadership decisions. And the one that got the attention, I think that's been like over 100,000 people have looked at this article, and 500 comments about it, and most of them were disappointingly predictable. I think, from my perspective, a lot of reactions. It was pretty funny. Like, the guy had to go earn his tab. He has his tab. He was in Best Ranger, out of West Point. He has a battalion now, so he's got it. But your comment, if I remember right, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said that when you went to a new unit, you wouldn't wear all that stuff.
That's right.
You get there, you just walk around. Would people still know you were the command sergeant major? That they wouldn't know who you were. You just walk around and observe. And
So,
where did you learn to do that? And what was telling about that experience?
so, well, I'll start off. I don't have a Ranger tab. So I think going to Ranger school, getting the tab, I think going to Ranger school by itself tells a lot about a person, their belief in themselves, their thought of what they can achieve, which is like huge, paramount. The ability to pass Ranger school tells even more about somebody. Tells about their ability, their desire to withstand hardship, to grow, to potentially, hopefully, part of the school is meant to bring out leadership shortfalls. So their ability to pass shows that they should be a good leader, or that they have the ability, the skills needed to be a leader. My belief, sometimes with people that go to Ranger school and they come back and they don't come back from the course and teach. They don't share their knowledge. So they went to Ranger school and that's their claim to fame. And I think I don't know that's what the person that was trying to say sometimes, but people will go to Ranger school and be like, well, I've done it. I got the tab. Like, I'm good. What else do I have to do? Well, on some level, you should want to come back and make your unit better, train like team level tactics, inspire others to go, to share the knowledge and the experience that you had, the things that you learned, the intrinsic stuff that you learned onto the formation. So, and that's kind of where I was. And it probably started when I came out of drill sergeant school, and I showed up, went to be a drill sergeant, came out of drill sergeant time, went to be a platoon sergeant in 101st, and I went to the Roxons, so 3rd Brigade, 101st, and they have a huge. Some will say it's a cult mentality. I don't think it is. I just think it's really high esprit de corps. If you're at first, you're in the 101st Division. To anyone that's like, they see it, they see the patch, they see it first. But inside of the division, it's very, I'm in Strike, Bastogne, Kirky, which is now gone, which was 4th Brigade, or I'm in the Roxons. So it's very brigade centric. And you have to perform day in and day out. Like, the mentality there is strong. You have to be a performer, you have to do well, all these types of things. So I showed up from drill sergeant. I didn't have a badge on, I didn't have a recruiter badge on, I didn't have my cab. And whenever I leave a job, I shave my head. And so I shave my head and I have a uniform that has nothing on, and I just show up. It's got US Army, it's got name, it's got an American flag, it's got the unit patch, and that's it. And my rank. And then I wear that for about 30 or 45 days, 60 days, until I just feel like putting stuff on. Part of my thought is I go and I just want them to look at me for me, who I am, whatever your impression of me, and that's fine. Know my work ethic, know how I interact with people. I believe in genuine interactions, authentic relationships, conversation, having fun. And then at some point in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm good. I feel comfortable, or I think they have a general understanding of who I am or what I'm about, and then I'll put on drill sergeant badge, recruiter badge, a cab, and maybe a deployment patch or not. And then I show up, and at least one or two people will be like, "You were a recruiter?" Yeah. And then I talk to them about it, and then somebody else will ask, you were a drill sergeant? Or they'll ask the same person will be like, you were a recruiter and a drill sergeant? And they were like, what was that like? And then I talked to them about it. But my thought would be, if I just went in with all of it, I'd lose an opportunity to have someone learn about me as a person and as a soldier, as a leader. And then they just focus on what I wear. And then they would see the drill sergeant badge and they would assume that I'm a type of person, because drill sergeants, by and large, have a perception about them, or a perception that's been put on them. And then recruiter, same thing. And then cab and no deployment patch. Oh, where was he deployed? How does he get the cab? So if I don't wear it, nobody focuses on that. And then when I was at Fort Campbell, I went to aerosol school. So then I wore that. And then when I leave, I shave my head again. Shaving the head is not so much about like getting people to think a way of me, either on the way in or the way out. It's more me. So on the way out of a job, do it. So I just focus on leaving the job, shoring up anything that I haven't done or that I haven't fully completed. It's one less thing to worry about, and I'm not tied to the hair. Some people in the military, in the army, they might be tied to what their hair is. Like that hair is a statement about them as a person. Like it's growing back. So this is since January, and I'll probably let it go until I either need to refocus because a lot of things are going wrong in my life or the job, or when I get ready to leave. So I'll let it grow. I'll keep it trimmed, keep it faded, it's in regulation. But I go in and out of a job with a bald head. And then when I show up, it does, without me wanting it or needing it, I think it does. People are like, you shaved your head? And then I'm like, yep. And then now it's growing back, and people are like, Sergeant Major, you're growing your hair out? I'm like, yep. So, like, coming in, they must have thought something. But then I don't have anything on. It's just how I go in clean, very minimalist. I'm able to focus and surge on the job. And then as I get more comfortable, I put a top on with badges and whatever else. And then my hair starts to grow out. And then I just go through the job. But it's more about how people perceive and what they come to expect when you wear certain things, I think.
Do you learn something from people who may treat you one way or the other when you're not wearing that stuff?
Uh, so there's two quotes. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, a fool man don't get fooled twice. George Bush said that. And then you just got to keep your grass cut low to keep an eye out for the snakes. Someone who's going to change how they interact with me or what they come to believe about me if I wear something or don't. Um, I I question their morals. I question their ability for me to just trust them at face value. And they could be a good person, and that doesn't mean that I'll never trust them or I won't come to befriend them or to hold them closely. But if what you're going to use to judge me is you don't wear anything, no. Well, now I think less of you. Like, okay, well, maybe I don't need you around. Maybe if and so the flip side is, so if I would have worn everything from day one, you would have held me on higher ground. Yes. Now I think that says just as much about what they need from their own character or from somebody else to have an interaction with, which is concerning, I think, as well.
Do you think the whole tab and metal things just got a little bit out of control?
So I think in some areas, I think specific for that post, that article, that tab in the army means so much to so many people for all the right reasons. It's been, even by people that don't have it, they come to believe if you go to that school and you graduate, like you should definitely wear it because it's hard, right? And hard things deserve rewards. But there's some people that connect just because somebody went, it's no longer an option if you wear it or not. It's become a requirement. And that's not written anywhere. I don't think anyone's ever said it, but there's like people like, why? Why don't you wear it? And I think that has spread to other things. The Army just came out with, they call it the Master MCIB, so MCIB, the Master Combat Infantryman's Badge, the Master Combat Arms Badge, or Combat Action Badge, and then the EFMB, like Master EFMB. So it's the Combat Badge, which has been around for a while. The Infantry one has been around, and the Medic one has been around the longest. And it's the Infantry one's the rifle, and it's got a wreath around it, and then you have to return fire doing your job as an infantryman in a combat situation against an enemy. The Medic one is you have to provide care to a wounded soldier under enemy fire. And then the Cab is you have to receive enemy fire within a certain amount of distance, and then I think perform some actions. So it's to do the combat one, you have to meet requirements. And then the Army created, and the Cab is the latest one. That one came out in like 2004, maybe, as a result of the number of soldiers that were getting injured that weren't medics or infantry. And then they came out with the EFMB, which is a skills-based badge, the CIB, which is the combat or the EIB, Expert Infantryman's Badge, and now there's the ESB, which came out probably in like 2017, 2018. And that's the Expert Soldier Badge. You do tasks in a garrison environment. It shows proficiency. You walk. And now they've came out just in the past like 2 months, the Master one. So if you have a EIB and a CIB, you now qualify for a Master, like a Master badge, which is, it takes the combat one and it adds a gold wreath around it. And it's to signify that you have your combat badge and your soldier badge. So it's kind of a way to combine both. And I think it's a meaningful change, because now you can see, used to, like a soldier would have to choose, do they wear the one from combat or do they wear the one that they demonstrated their proficiency in their craft, in their profession. And now with this one, you don't have to choose anymore. You can wear one badge that shows you got both of them. So I think that's a good one. And there's other people that will say, like, deployment patch. If you have a deployment patch and you don't wear it, I get asked, why don't you wear a deployment patch? I'm like, one, it's not in the top of my mind. Two, like, I know where I've been. Like, do I wear any of the badges for you or for me? And there is value at certain times, like organizationally, it makes sense to. And someone will say, like, no, it's for, you wear it because of the people that may have fallen. Well, like, I was there. I don't need to be reminded about soldiers that didn't make it home. I don't need that. I don't need the combat patch to remind me of people that didn't make it. I don't need my drill sergeant badge to remind me of my time as a drill sergeant. I don't need any of that to remind me. So if it's a conversation about, does a soldier need to wear the badge for themselves, their own personal edification, for the group, the organization, or are they doing it for somebody else to feel comfortable or have a belief that they're capable? Because the Army doesn't say that you have to wear it, which I don't think they need to. I don't think they should. I think it's an individual choice. And people do get wrapped around the axle of the Ranger tab most easily. That one, and probably deployment patches. Like, they always get people riled up about it.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this comment. There was one comment from an officer who, probably the most heartbreaking one that I saw. He had a platoon. I think he went to Ranger School and got hurt or something. Didn't have time to go back before his battalion was being deployed. And his battalion commander took his platoon from him before deployment because he didn't have his Ranger tab. And other than that, there was no other reason. And he's a battalion commander. And he says, I'll never do that to, somebody who works for me. It's because of that. I thought that was a really interesting deal. Anyway, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's
You
tough.
been married all these years, lots of deployments, a lot of time. You know how many times you've moved in the military? How many times have you moved? Dozen?
One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
It doesn't.
And that doesn't count deployment trips. That puts it
Right,
at like
deployment.
17 or 18.
You've been married to the same woman, right? You never got divorced. Have you been through a divorce yet?
Nope.
No divorce. Couple
Nope.
kids. I mean, obviously that's tough. Tell me about your wife. Does she have a career?
She's probably got the hardest the hardest job I think of any person that I've ever met. And it's probably the same for anyone else who's married and a wife that chooses to stick it out. She's a homemaker. She's the one that runs the house, takes care of the kids, does all the things. So there is some hope or effort. The youngest one, Owen, will go to full-time kindergarten next year, trying to see if she wants to. The Army does enough for me, job security wise, financially, that if she works, it would be nice. But there's not a need for her to work. We both agree that she probably needs to for her own sanity.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's honestly possible to be a military spouse with the movement and have a career.
They've they've tried to make some strides over the past couple like decade and a half, allowing paying for licensing from state to state. There's some programs that'll allow spouses to move and get credentialed in another state. There's some organizations or some programs that'll pay for credentialing, like jobs that usually are remote, medical coding assistant, medical billing.
Got it?
Um, the the Army has some programs that spouses can get involved in and use that to pay for credentials, and then they can use that to get in the workplace. If spouses aren't employed, or if they are, and they volunteer with like unit SFRGs, they can use their time volunteering on a resume. And specifically, like government service jobs, will use that volunteer time as employment credit, which
Right,
is help. So
right.
if you've done SFRG and you've been involved in units and you've like taken care of soldiers, you've supported the command, you can get all that time and all those hours on a memo and validated and show that's why you haven't had a job.
Are there any questions about your career and your leadership as a NCO that I didn't ask that I should have?
So the one that sticks out, and so how do you so I've lost one soldier on a deployment. That loss, that would probably the only thing, because I think if we're being real, and the thought of deployments or a near peer threat, like soldiers will fall, and leaders are going to have to deal with that. And that goes into any other profession where people are expected to go towards gunshots. People are expected to go into a burning house. Police officers are expected to go around a corner or through a door where they don't know what's on the other side. And usually you have like someone that in those professions, you have someone who's superior, someone who's newer, and like someone's going to lead and someone's going to follow. So when something happens specific for my profession, just rectifying, like there's like, I think some lenses. There's like a lens in my brain about what I think was supposed to happen. There's a lens in my heart of what I believe to happen. And then what I remember seeing, and how do you get them to align so that you can, in your mind, you can say, I've done everything that I can to prepare somebody uh, through training, that I made them as ready as possible on the beforehand. Before we even out, whenever went out and did one piece of training, did I make sure they were prepared, that I developed them, that I trained them, and then when we went out and did training, did we do as tough, realistic training as possible? And then during the deployment, did I do everything right? Did I everything that was under my control at least? Because the enemy always has a vote. Um, so how do you justify or rectify the loss, and how do you deal with it over time? That was my hardest leadership lesson, I think.
Was that an internal lesson for you?
So it started, and so my first experience with loss, I was a private. I was like 18. I was 18 in Iraq, and I remember walking down the road, and my NCO was on the front right of me, and there was an overpass, and I was like, Sergeant Arnold, what's that on the overpass? He was like, Riley, you don't look at that. You're too old, or you're too young. And I was like, he was like, look at the ground. I was like, okay. So then I looked at the ground. We went walking, and then when we get back, I was like, why'd you tell me to look down? He was like, you don't need to see that. And it was uh, a Bradley went under an overpass, and like an IED went off, and it exploded right over it. So I'm 18, and he was like, don't look at that. He was like, you just keep going. I was like, okay. I had no idea. So that was my first one. And then the first deployment, I got blown up 3 times, 4 times.
IEDs.
So three IEDs and one RPG was shot at my Humvee. I was like 3 feet, 5 feet behind it, and an RPG came across and hit the vehicle, spun me around. So the craziest part is like it's an adrenaline rush. So everything about the body shuts down, and then it goes into either fight or flight mode. So no matter which one you choose, like all that your body has is adrenaline. So I was caught off guard, and I was like, no. And there was like a 300-foot dust cloud because it was in Iraq, and they shot across a bunch of dirt. So it was just shooting up a dust cloud. And I'd never heard an RPG before, but I heard a crackle, and then I saw a dust cloud, and I was like, I know what that is. So I made as small of a target as possible, couldn't see anything anywhere, and then it hit the vehicle, and then once it hit, I just went around the side, and I started helping people get out of the vehicle. But I remember for about 3 seconds, like I couldn't move, but all I felt was like alive. I felt adrenaline. And then after like 3 seconds, 5 seconds later, it snapped and I was able to move. So that was like my first real experience. And then some IEDs. 2004, some insurgents blew up a pump station, and I was on a quick reaction force, and there was like mayhem on the ground, like gore everywhere. So I remember going through there again, 18 years old, pulling soldiers to Bradley's, to the medics, um, going out and picking up like whatever it is, like to try to keep it with the soldier before they get evac'd. And then fast forward, so I take all of that. I go to Iraq one more time. I go to Afghanistan for the first time. And I remember telling my platoon, I was like, we're like 2 months in. And they were like, it's so boring. Nothing ever happens. And I was like, that's a good thing. I was like, be glad. I was like, we're going to keep doing the exact same thing. If somebody does something, like by all means, like then we're prepared. And then, and they were like, no, like we really want something to happen. I was like, no, you don't. I was like, you don't want that. And then April 8th, so my medic in Jalalabad, Afghanistan, April 8th, 2015, we were walking back from a key leader engagement, and I was in the back. Sections already went forward, and then we heard like gunfire, and then we ran towards them. And when we get there, it was already too late. One soldier lost a finger, soldier fractured a femur from a gunshot. A couple of the soldiers had some scrapes. Soldier got shot in the Kevlar. The bullet traveled around the back and came out the back. He had some head trauma. And then the medic got shot in the neck. And then, like, he passed away. So, and his name is John Dawson. Yesterday, the 8th was his 10-year anniversary. So, and then afterwards, right? So all that happens, I get people in the vehicles, and then I tell my driver we're going back. And I remember calling, it's like, open the gate. Like, I'm not stopping. Like, I'm coming through, whether it's open or not. And then afterwards, later that day, we got all the platoon together. And then I talked to him, and I was like, and I just asked, I remember pretty frankly, who's glad for what happened today? And they were kind of taken aback. And they were like, what? Why? Like, Doc died, like this, and this. I was like, who wants that to happen? And they were like, no. I was like, who likes how it feels? And they were like, no. I was like, the likelihood that you get into contact and everybody makes it out alive is very low, because something's going to happen, or someone's going to get hurt, the likelihood that everybody makes it out every time and nothing happens is unlikely. The concerning part that I found is, like, no matter how many times, I always want to go on a deployment, and I always look for, or I always wait for the opportunity for something to happen. Like, I'm waiting, because I think it's the closest thing, never done it, but it's the closest thing to chasing a high. Like, that feeling from that adrenaline, it's like today could be the day. And that feeling, that rush of, like, the body taking over and forcing adrenaline to make the body be able to move when it shouldn't. Like, naturally in the mind, when stuff like that happens, your body shouldn't react that way. You shouldn't run towards it. Like, the natural thought is like, don't go that way. Go the opposite way. Don't go in a burning building. Go the opposite way. It's safe. But I think once you're used to it, or once you accept that this is the way that it should feel, like, you continuously look for it. So that's, like, being able to temper that desire to have action, understanding the consequences, being able to prepare for loss. Now I think it usually results in PTSD, which I think is a horrible term. I think PTSD is when it becomes debilitating, or when you can't get past it, you can't grow from it. But I'm able to deal with it moderately well. I think it's taken like 15 years, and it's a continuous process, but I'm able to, like, understand what's really true, like what I had control over, what I didn't, my actions that I took, were they right? Did I do anything wrong? And that's where I think those lenses from what I thought should have happened in my heart, what I remember or know to be true in my mind, and, like, merging them so that I can see everything that I probably could have done was done. I did the best that I could. I trained them, made sure people were ready. And then I still talk to soldiers today from that deployment, from my first deployment. So creating a lifeline for people, I think that's also critical, and that helps with loss, because there's certain times of the year when the loss is more, it hits harder, connections harder. I talk to my wife, and she's like, "How are you doing this year?" And I'm like, "I'm pretty good." She's like, "Hey, no issues, no like spikes, or no jumps in like memories." I'm like, "Well, one or two or whatever." I talk to the soldier's father on the anniversary day. So I still talk to him. Knowing that he's still willing to talk makes not easier, it just makes it more acceptable that his son was lost, and that he's not turned off by someone that was with his son, who was my soldier, from talking. He encourages it. And I think moving forward to whatever the next conflict is, the Army can't lose sight of that. That's probably one of the biggest lessons learned, I would think, that we took from the 20 years of global war on terrorism. Soldiers being ready morally, spiritually, on what it means to lose somebody, and how do you lead through that loss. I think that's critical.
Do you think the Army's gotten better at that, or
Trying.
trying it?
So unless you've lived with it and you've
I mean, is that an Army decision anyway, or is it just the individuals involved?
So I think it's a lot of the individuals, because unless you've been through it, or traumatic experiences, it doesn't have to be the same, but any traumatic experience, and you've figured out a way to move through it healthfully. So not relying on alcohol, not relying on drugs, not putting yourself in harmful situations, harmful behaviors that are like, you're getting a rush or you're getting adrenaline from somewhere, and you're not really dealing with whatever you need to fill that gap with. So I think unless you've lived through something traumatic, you've moved past it in a positive way, you've learned from it, you've grown from it, and then you have to be able to talk to others that are going through something. And then it's not directive. It's not just because I outrank you, I'm going to tell you how you should feel.
Got it.
I have a similar situation. I think I can understand what you're saying. Like, let's have a conversation. And I don't think the Army can say, like, you will do this, because unless you're trained and you're a psychologist or a psychiatrist or you're a social worker and you're trained in loss, grief, the mind, I don't know how else you certify somebody to be
Be
able
able to
to
talk about it.
talk about it in a meaningful way. So like I talk to soldiers, but I don't I don't give clinical advice. I don't tell them what they should do. If anything, I say if you think you need to talk to somebody, by all means, like I can get you in touch with behavioral health, but like here's my experience. Here's some thoughts that I've had with myself. Does any of that resonate with you? Oh, yes, this and this. Oh, let's talk about that because I can talk from a position of experience. Is it going to give them the right answer? Maybe, maybe not. But it lets them know that somebody else is out there and that they're not going at it alone, which the numbers of suicide in the nation, like the younger generation, how they deal with stress, conflict, that's like a societal issue as
Okay.
I see it.
Let's go on to the lightning round questions. We've almost been talking for 2 hours, so it's been awesome. First question: the hardest day you had in uniform. I think we just went through that. What's the
Yes.
best day you had in uniform?
The best day?
Yeah.
I think it's going to be May 8th. So my daughter, she's going to, hopefully she graduates May 8th. And I'm going to be there in uniform, in my dress uniform. She'll be in hers. So I got married to my wife in 2011. She already had our daughter. So it's really my bonus daughter. She was 6, 7. And she's lived with us 7 until, from 2011 until 2024. So 13 years, 12 years, 12, 13 years she's lived with us. So from when she was 7 until 20, 19, and then she left. And then she came back at the very end of 24 before she left for the Army. So looking where we came from, how much she resisted, like what I said, things that I commented on, my outlook on life, my outlook on what she should or should not be doing. And then I just I got my first letter from her. It came in the mail. I came home after 2 weeks of school, and then there was a letter here. I opened it up, and she said, "I wish I would have listened more. I didn't know what you were saying. That it was for my interest, and I see that now. And I should have just accepted and trusted you." So now, May 8th, she's going to graduate. I'll have 21 years in the military still, and then so seeing my daughter join, and she's going to be a tanker, so a 19 kilo. I think I wouldn't have expected that job for her, but like if she likes it, if she's good at it, then by all means.
Well, congratulations. Awesome.
Yeah.
One soldier you've learned the most from and why?
So I would say it would be the brigade commander when I was the brigade first sergeant. He took. Have you ever read Once an Eagle?
I haven't.
So there's a book. It's like almost mandated reading from West Point, I think. It's like 1,300 pages, and there's like a good cadet, good soldier, good officer, and then there's one who's more about a personal progression. Like, what do I got to do to get ahead? He always looked at it as a competition with a direct person instead of how can I just make the unit better, and then we'll all be better for it. And I think the good guy's name is Sam Damon. I didn't read the book, but I watched the TV miniseries. It's on YouTube. It's free. And the actor is Sam Elliott. So it's from like the 70s. He's like 20 years old. And the one quote that the brigade commander said, I think it was, if I have to choose between being a good officer and a good human, I will always choose to be a good human. So like as a brigade commander, that's what and so personally, he's the one that's done the most for me. He made it normal for me to want to like spend more time with my family. And he said like quality time with my family, because there's like a thought, if I'm home, then I'm home. I can still do stuff at home for work and be fine. But he was like, when you're home, be present, like have meaningful moments with your family, because when I choose to stay and serve, like if I don't make meaningful moments and make that worthwhile, then they're probably not going to end up being there. So making sure that I have quality moments when I do go home. So I'm in Kansas, the family's in New York. I went home about a month ago, 3 weeks ago for a week. I'll see them in Georgia, and then I might go home in May or June before the Poland rotation, but maybe not. But when I go home, like my whole time is focused on them. When I went to the Sergeant Major Academy in Texas, I didn't do college. I didn't do any extra electives. I just did the mandatory coursework. And I made sure that I was there to either pick up my son. I walked home with my son from school. I walked him to school. I would ride with my wife to bring the other kids to school. I was either walked him home from school or I was at home ready for him to get home. And then we would hang out for 30 minutes or an hour when nobody else was there. And he's 12 now. So back then he was like 11 or 10. And I know that no matter where I go, I'm going to have to leave or deploy. So like creating good moments, quality moments, I think is key. And he taught me that. And then my very first platoon when I was a private, we still talk to about 20 of them. There's a group chat, and we bullshit and banter back and forth with about 8 or 10 of them. My squad leader, so one income, two households, separated. We have a home in New York with a mortgage and all the like stuff with home ownership, paying for it. 2 kids or 3 kids at home, and they all growth spurts, paying for everything. And then I'm here. I still have to buy stuff. I have to do hygiene products, like eat, all the other things, stuff for work. Team leader and he retired, but my team leader from when I was a private, like opened up his house and was like, instead of you knowing that I was going to go to potentially Europe later in the year or whatever, like instead of you getting a lease or having to buy a bed and like furnishing a house for 7 months, he was like, why not just stay here? He was like, I got the room. So like that platoon, that very first platoon when I was 18 years old, showed me what it meant to be a leader, how leaders are expected to care for their soldiers, what it means to collect more than a paycheck, and to actually like internalize everything about the Army and being a leader was just how they interacted. There's no greater concern than if you think that you're going to disappoint a leader. So my very first platoon sergeant, I didn't do something, and I don't remember what it was, but I remember how I felt. And he sat me down, Sergeant First Class Jones, and he sat me down, and he was like, "Come here, Riley." I was like, "Yes, Sergeant Jones." He was like, "Take a seat," and he put his arm around me, and he said, "Riley, you let me down." I was like, "What did I do?" And I don't remember what it was, but I remember him saying, I know you can do better," and it really disappointed me. He was like, "I need you to do better," and I was like, "Understood." And from that day on, like I never got told I disappointed him, never got told I wasn't doing enough. Like from that day on, and probably till today, what I'm doing is never enough. I can always do more. I can always do better. I will always be proud of everyone and what they're doing, but I'm not satisfied. So I think I'd rather lead out of a concern for disappointment than out of fear. Like I don't want to lead from a place where people fear me, and I don't think they will. I'm not a fearful looking person, but like
Even when you're bald, you're not.
I mean, some people will say
How about when
yes.
you're drill sergeant?
I would say I'm low threat, not no threat. So, like, just because I don't come off mean every day doesn't mean I can't. I think if people are concerned about disappointing you, I think you're in a far better place as a leader than if they're concerned if you're going to lead out of fear. That's a personal opinion.
Most useful piece of gear, and let's make it work related, but it doesn't have to be deployment related. It could be, your moleskin notebook or something.
So that's tough. Um, I think you got to have a really good pair of boots.
What's your jam? What are your boots you wearing?
Right now, I got a pair of Go Ruck boots, but I'll either Go Ruck boots or Garmots. I think they're the T8 Bifidas. I'm a fan of those. Go Ruck, the Mac V1s or the V2s, they're pretty much the leather, the assault boot or the leather jungle boots from years past, but in coyote and with a little bit better sole. You can't go wrong with a good whoopee though. Like they last forever. They're real light. You just can't get them wet, but that's why you have a poncho.
Got it. Worst job you can imagine.
Worst job. Not being in the army.
Come on, that's lame.
Yeah, that's lame. I don't know. I've had ones that I would not want to do again, but would they? I don't know that they'd be the
I mean,
worst.
it's gonna be like outside the army. Mine is being a dentist. I wouldn't want to be a dentist.
Oh, okay. And they're, let me say this because I have a septic tank, and they provide a very critical role, but like septic tank operator. Part of that goes, I think it goes back to my fear. So I have like one real fear, and for this, I think I would just shut down. Like I would quit if I'm deployed, and it's been a fear since I was a private. If I was like in Iraq, Afghanistan, dismounted, or in a vehicle, and they put an IED on a shit truck, and then they drove it, or it exploded, and all that I had on me was like human feces, I'd quit. I think that's the worst thing, and that goes with the job, I think. So yeah, probably like poo sucker.
Dream job, and it can't be your current one. That's lame too.
So I think if I retire and my wife gets a job, I'm just going to be a stay-at-home dad.
You don't think you go crazy in about 3 days?
Probably. So the good part
I give
is
you a week before your wife makes you get a job.
I have we have enough. We have a little piece of land, and then it's got some chicken coops on it.
Be busy just out there tinkering, raising animals.
I'll get some chickens. I'll collect eggs every day. Am I going to likely get out and not get a job? Probably not. My trajectory on when I get out is undetermined. Maybe I have 9 years left. Hopefully that puts me at 30. And that's just for, one, I still enjoy it. Two, I think I bring value to the organization. I'm not bored. I put a smile on every day easily. It doesn't feel like work. And 30 years gives me financial stability. I get 75% of my base pay. Theoretically, I wouldn't have to work to pay bills. I wouldn't have to work to pay my mortgage or pay any bills. So, but I think I'm going to go into real estate. That's a dream. I like talking to people. I like making connections. And then I like to look at things that I can't necessarily buy or afford. And being a real estate agent would give me that opportunity.
Advice, last question, advice to your 18-year-old self.
I would say save more money. Like save earlier. Like the difference, if I would have just sucked it up and started putting $200 away at 18 years old in like the TSP, the government version of a 401k, I never stopped. Or if every time I got promoted, I upped it, you'd be more acclimated to not having as much money. You would naturally save more money consistently, and I'd probably be sitting close to $500,000, maybe $1 million. If I would have never like faltered or backed away because I wanted to buy stuff. And I say that because for the first like year and a half, I was horrible. I would spend I had Fort Hood National Bank, and if they're still out there and they allow this, I mean, they're a business, they do what they do. But like I was allowed to go 1.5 times my last paycheck in the hole. So as a private,
probably at 20% interest.
So I was like, I'd get paid $700, $800, and then on payday I'd have $400 in my bank account for me to spend for 2 weeks because I was always in the hole $350, $400. So just don't spend as much. They're only material possessions.
Brandon, Riley, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yes, sir.